One of my colleagues had brought up COA and affordable housing around the state. And it's interesting. I mean, I was a former mayor who had to deal with these quotas over the 20 years. And one of the things that, we hear a lot about climate change is causing, more intense storms, more flooding and all of that. I had to know somebody who's an environmental scientist who works for a huge firm. They do a lot of work. And he said, one of the biggest problems with the increased flooding and the increased damage we have is the increased impervious coverage. You deforest, it causes erosion, it silts in the rivers and the creeks, the interior creeks. And a lot of these, I don't know what it is today, but I think within reasonably recent history, the burn rate was 60 acres a day. And a lot of that was being driven by these huge COA quotas that towns are forced to observe. If you drive around Monmouth County, especially, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but some of the towns, hundreds of acres cleared, multiple projects going on to accommodate these huge quotas. Now, is that something that DEP weighs in on, the sort of environmental damage that is done by these huge quotas that towns are forced to observe? Is that something that you're concerned about, or you have people looking at the damage caused by that?
I would not. It would surprise me to know. It would surprise me to find. I don't have that information, but it would surprise me to find that that environmental damage is associated with affordable housing criteria. The damage that you're getting to with respect to deforestation and water runoff is a function of our sort of haphazard approach to land use planning, where we look at sort of the single lot by single lot development, and we're not attentive to what Assemblywoman Munoz was talking about, watershed-wide conditions, right? And it's not the affordable housing, it's the impermeable surface. There are permeable surfaces, slightly more expensive, that would be beneficial both from a water runoff perspective and environmentally. And that's irrespective of whether something is affordable or market rate. Everybody should just be doing that. Of course, we don't force folks, but it's the right thing to do, and it would help these multiple different imperatives.
Right. And I disagree a little bit about the impact of affordable housing, because these quotas, 1/5 of a builder's remedy lawsuit is affordable, while the other 4/5 are market rate, to allow the builder to be able to build affordable units at a profit. So what I'm saying is it drives the density and drives the size of the development to the point where it's a greater footprint of impervious coverage and all of the other domino effects that causes.
But it doesn't have to be a greater footprint of impervious cover. It could be a greater density vertically. Now, some localities don't like that, and they have ordinances against it. I think that probably needs to change. I think climate change is going to force us to change it. But that's more a function of home rule considerations than affordable housing in and of itself. I mean, isn't the problem that we have to have builder remedy lawsuits to begin with? Why do we leave it that way?
Right, but I mean, the thing is, some of these suburban towns are not meant for 10, 12-story high-rises. They're just not, for a lot of reasons. The infrastructure can't handle it. But one of my colleagues was talking about black and brown communities being disproportionately affected by emissions and things like that. Well, one of the reasons is those populations tend to be in urban areas where there are more people, more vehicles, more everything per square mile. So that sort of density generates this sort of thing. Now, do we want to replicate those conditions in suburban areas and rural areas? I don't think so. But my question really was, does DEP weigh in on this or take this sort of thing into consideration?
So we do weigh in on it. We do take it into consideration. But I think the point is that our urban core didn't have to be that way, and our suburban and exurban communities don't have to either. Those are all false choices, right? We can build things better in a cost-effective way, and in a way that that promotes affordability and protects the environment. We just have to choose to.
And I'll just say one last thing. When you pay the highest property taxes in the nation, try telling a suburban homeowner that you have to look at that high rise or those high rises to accommodate density, to accommodate some sort of quota that the courts or DCA or whoever at the time is handling it.
But aren't we giving that homeowner sort of the wrong point of analysis in saying and pointing their frustration at the affordable housing criteria? Because the reason for the higher property, I mean, is a function of the multiplicity of local governance structures. It's not because of affordable housing. It's because we have 565 municipalities in this tiny little state.
I'm talking about what you're saying would be the solution. Tremendous high rises in typically, 1-2-story single-family unit homes.
Yeah, I just don't think that's the choice, right? If you're looking to achieve greater density to avoid floodwater runoff, you might change your municipal ordinance to allow a fourth floor instead of capping it at 3. I don't think we're talking about turning my town of Highland Park into New Brunswick. I think we're saying there's more flooding on the fringes, and we need to build a little more density into the interior. It doesn't mean changing the fabric of a community. I just don't think it means that.
Maybe if you can do it a little bit, but I think it would be dramatic to a lot of people too. And, they have a right to control their own development destiny. Having roots there maybe for a long time and, paying very high property taxes. The least they can do is sort of determine the look and the landscape of the town they live in.
Of course.
So anyway, I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Thank you.